do GLP-1 drugs actually cause you to lose lean muscle mass? All right, but before we start, hi everyone, my name is Justin Kampf. I have a PhD in exercise and health sciences, and I currently work as the fitness director for Sequence, which is a medical weight loss company. As a disclaimer, our doctors do prescribe GLP-1 medications, and my role at Sequence is really to make sure that people are exercising, and specifically, we really put a premium on engaging in strength training. Now, I wanted to make this video just because I'm seeing a lot of videos, I'm seeing a lot of blogs where people are talking about GLP-1 medications and then lean mass loss. And then using this loss of lean mass as, to me, what it seems like almost like a fear-mongering tactic. So what I'm going to tell you is that first, just like a lot of things that gain traction and then gain attention, is that there's a kernel of truth here, and actually they're not wrong. People do lose lean mass when they're taking these drugs. But it's not so much because of the drug, as this is actually a natural occurrence with weight loss. So yes, when you lose weight, unless you engage in some mitigating factors, which I'll talk specifically about exercise, but like having a high protein diet or also engaging in strength training, you will lose some lean mass, which is not optimal. So we want to talk about ways that you can prevent that, and we also want to make sure that people aren't necessarily thinking that doing these medications is the cause of the loss of lean mass. So what I am going to cover, and what most of these people don't talk about, is what actually happens in these research studies, and then why the loss of lean mass is not actually that surprising. I'm also going to share some research which suggests that if people exercise when they're on GLP-1 medications, that they can actually gain or at least retain the muscle that they have. So first, let's get into a little bit of the research. So number one is glucagon-like peptide 1, or GLP-1 is a hormone that is made in the gut, and it helps to regulate blood sugar. It suppresses appetite and energy intake as well. It's released after you eat, which stimulates the release of insulin, and this in turn lowers blood sugar. So GLP-1 medications are a class of drug which was originally used to treat type 2 diabetes. Again, these are glucose-lowering drugs that increase insulin secretion, they decrease glucagon secretion, they slow gastric emptying, and they increase satiety. So examples of GLP-1 drugs, and these are going to be not necessarily the medication name, but what's the active ingredient. They include liraglutide, which is Saxenda, tirzepatide, which is Mounjaro, and then semaglutide, which is Ozempic and Wegovy. So semaglutide and liraglutide have been approved by the FDA for weight loss, and then tirzepatide trials are underway. And I will talk about one of the studies that was published that looked at tirzepatide. So now here is where I find that people typically draw concerns, and this is going to be from one study which was titled Once Weekly Semaglutide in Adults with Overweight and Obesity. So in this trial, there was a subsample of 140 participants who had a BMI or a body mass index which was over 40, which really means that these people were in a severely obese category. These people had a DEXA scan, and what they looked at specifically was where did they lose weight from? Loss of lean mass, loss of fat mass, and they also looked at visceral fat loss. I'll really be talking just about the loss of lean mass and then also the loss of fat. And so in this study, in this subsample study, 95% of participants, or sorry, not 95%, 95 participants were taking semaglutide, and 45 were in the placebo group. These people were randomized such that it was in the main study, it was 2 people taking semaglutide for every 1 person that was in the control or the placebo group. And I recently had just read one blog. I'm not going to call it out. I'm not going to say what it is, but I will say what was said. And so what was said in this blog, again, I put this under the fear-mongering category, as they said that the individuals who were on this drug actually lost a meaningful amount of lean mass, not just fat mass. The average weight loss from the drug in one trial was 8.4 kilograms. Of that, approximately 60% was from fat mass and 40% was from lean body mass. So they're highlighting that 40% of what was lost came from lean mass. And they also actually incorrectly stated the amount of weight that was lost. So they said 8.4 kilograms of weight were lost. As a matter of fact, it was actually 8.4 kilograms of fat that was lost in the semaglutide group, and then that 5.26 kilograms of lean mass. And again, yes, this equates to a 40% of what they lost came from lean mass, which is valuable to bring up, and it's something that we do want to avoid that. We want to mitigate that. We don't want to lose lean mass when we're losing weight. Optimal weight loss is going to be where it predominantly comes from fat mass. But there are important questions that are not addressed or glossed over when people talk about this loss of lean mass. And I think an interesting one, and the first one that I would bring up, is what happened in the placebo group. Okay, so again, there's 45 people in the placebo group, and there are 95, I think I said 95 in the semaglutide group. The placebo group lost 1.37 kilograms of fat, and they lost 1.83 kilograms of lean mass. Okay, so that's 57% of their loss is coming from lean mass. So before, the person was saying, okay, full 40% came from lean mass, that's bad. Well, in the placebo, 57% came from lean mass. So yes, in absolute terms, the semaglutide group lost more lean mass, but as an overall percentage, it was actually the placebo that lost more, and almost no one's talking about this. The semaglutide group also happened to lose considerably more body fat than the placebo group. So now let's break down the intervention and see if there were any mitigating factors that participants undertook or could have undertaken that could have spared lean mass while on this medication. Now, in this study, participants with comorbidities, who were overweight and had comorbidities, or who were obese, which is a BMI of 30 or higher, were randomly assigned to the semaglutide group or the placebo group for a 68-week trial. They all received a lifestyle intervention, so participants received counseling. Part of that included talking about increasing physical activity with a counselor up to 150 minutes per week, with activities such as walking. So walking was what was encouraged. Now, this was actually recorded. They talked about this in the counseling sessions, but that data was never included or reported in the analysis. As far as I know, it definitely wasn't included in the main paper that I was discussing, meaning we don't actually know how much physical activity these participants obtained. Additionally, there is no mention of strength training, which would be a huge mitigating factor, nor do we have data on the range of lean mass that was lost, meaning that we don't have any variance data, so we don't know if some people actually retain lean mass. And also in this subsample, there was people with a BMI of over 40. So for these people, losing 1.37 kilograms of fat, which is what happened in the placebo group, is probably not that clinically meaningful. So that's interesting to me, is that it's probably not that clinically meaningful of results, and they actually lost a greater percentage of muscle than the semaglutide group. So yes, in this trial, there was a subset of 140 participants. Those taking the medication lost lean mass. True, 40% loss of lean mass, or 40% of their weight loss from lean mass. Now, as a percentage, again, the placebo group actually lost more. And we don't know how much physical activity they were actually obtaining in either of the groups. And there's no mention of strength training. So just think about that for lean mass loss for semaglutide, which again is Ozempic or Wegovy. Next, another trial which used tirzepatide, which is under the brand name of Mounjaro. And this study was titled Tirzepatide Once Weekly for the Treatment of Obesity. And this study recruited a near identical population, and the trial lasted a little bit longer. It was 72 weeks, okay? This study also stated, so almost identical, they said lifestyle intervention included regular lifestyle counseling delivered by a dietitian or a qualified healthcare professional to help the participants adhere to a healthful, balanced meals with a deficit of 500 calories per day and at least 150 minutes of physical activity per week. Now, similar to the other study, there was a subgroup that had their body composition examined. Now, this is word for word what the authors write. They said that the mean reduction in total body fat was 33.9% with tirzepatide as compared with 8.2% in the placebo. Now, I think probably what a lot of people aren't doing is they're not going to the supplementary materials before they're writing their blogs or doing their videos. So when you actually look at the supplementary materials, which presents the data on total lean mass loss, you see that in this case, the placebo group lost 2.6% of their lean mass, and the tirzepatide group lost 10.9% of their lean mass. But again, that sounds bigger, but let's actually break this down. So first, this study didn't, at least to my knowledge, they didn't have baseline data on the participants for these specific body composition measures. Again, this just wasn't anything that I saw. But I'm just gonna, again, I'm extrapolating this from the first study that I talked about because they did have that data and it's a similar population. So let's take a look at the average participants from the semaglutide trials. They were on average 228 pounds and had almost 100 pounds of fat mass, and they had a body fat percentage of 43.4%. So if you extrapolate those numbers to the percentage of fat lost and the percentage of lean mass lost for the tirzepatide study, the placebo and the tirzepatide groups are almost nearly identical. So meaning, yes, the medication group lost more fat, and yes, they lost more lean mass, but in terms of absolute percentages, it's really not that different. Again, we have no statistical analysis which included physical activity, and it doesn't seem like they did strength training, or at least we don't know if they did strength training. Now I'm gonna share with you one last study, I think the most interesting study, because they actually did have physical activity included. So again, to my knowledge, the first GLP-1 medication that was approved for weight loss was liraglutide, okay? This is where results get interesting because, like I said, one of these trials actually included exercise. This trial was titled Healthy Weight Loss Maintenance with Exercise, Liraglutide, or both combined. And this study, the authors write that we investigated the efficacy of a 1-year treatment with moderate to vigorous intensity exercise program, liraglutide at a dose of 3 milligrams per day, or the combination of exercise plus liraglutide, or compared with placebo for a healthy weight loss maintenance after weight loss was induced by a low-calorie diet. So let me read off what actually happened in this study. What was the protocol? So first, in this study, participants followed a low-calorie diet, which was 800 calories per day for 8 weeks. All of the participants who had a weight loss of at least 5% in that period of their baseline body weight were then randomly assigned to one of 4 groups for 1 year. Okay, so it was 8 weeks of a run-in period where they had to lose 5% of their body weight to be included. So one group was exercise plus placebo, titled the exercise group. Liraglutide plus usual activity, so no exercise intervention. Exercise plus liraglutide, so this was the combination group, and then just a placebo group without changes in physical activity, so 4 groups. All of the participants in this study had a BMI of ranging between 32 to 43, and for the exercise part, each participant was assigned to an exercise instructor. These instructors had a bachelor's or a master's degree in exercise physiology, and these instructors planned and monitored. So they planned and monitored the individual programs. So after an initial 6-week ramp-up phase, participants were encouraged to attend supervised group exercise sessions. This involved 30 minutes of vigorous intensity, interval-based indoor cycling, and then also 15 minutes of circuit training 2 times per week. And they were instructed to perform moderate to vigorous intensity exercise individually, which mostly involved outdoor activities such as cycling, but they also recommended indoor cycling. They recommended running or brisk walking 2 times per week. Now again, we have to look at the supplementary materials for this study, and you can actually see what these participants did. And you can see that they did strength training in their circuits. They did step-ups, they did dips, they did Russian twist, and this is exactly what they did. Leg presses, bicep curls, shoulder presses, back extensions, rowing, they did squats, crunches, they did kettlebell swings, a little bit questionable if they're novice for exercise. They did machine chest presses, they did lunges, planks, and they did assisted push-ups. So they actually did a lot of strength training, the most I've seen in any GLP-1 study. Now, on their own, what they did, this is what the authors write, the types of exercises performed most frequently by participants individually were outdoor and indoor cycling, outdoor running and brisk walking, followed by swimming, and then that circuit training. Other exercise forms performed were group exercise in facilities, so aerobics and muscle strengthening exercises, and also sports, football, soccer, and then badminton as well. I don't see pickleball on there. So the participants who took the medication and exercise had the best results for changes in body weight. And here's the interesting thing. The placebo and the exercise groups over time actually gained back some of their weight. That happened. But the liraglutide and then the liraglutide plus exercise at least maintained the weight that they had lost. But the exercise group actually continued to decrease their body fat percentage. So while their weight went up a little bit, they decreased their body fat. That's because they were putting on muscle. So they put on muscle, which is great. Exercise plus liraglutide had the greatest decrease in body fat percentage And then in fact, the exercise plus liraglutide group actually, and this is the most important part, the exercise plus liraglutide group actually retained their lean mass in this study. This is a great study too because the authors actually tracked adherence to exercise. The authors write that the mean weekly duration of exercise was 118 minutes in the exercise group and 111 minutes in the combination groups. The mean frequency of exercise was 2.5 times per week in the exercise group only, and then 2.4 times in the combination group, so taking liraglutide and also exercising. And these authors write that the combination of exercise and liraglutide treatment was associated with loss of fat mass and reduction in waist circumference that were approximately twice that observed in the single treatments, and also it preserved lean mass. So what I would say is yes, loss of lean mass is something that can happen when you're taking these medications, but it doesn't seem like these medications are the cause so much as weight loss is the cause. Participants on these medications lose more fat and they also lose more muscle, but in absolute terms, for the studies that I had previously mentioned, the semaglutide and then the tirzepatide studies, it's nearly identical. In percentage terms, the semaglutide study and the placebo group actually lost a greater percentage from muscle. But when structured exercise is included, when you're using these medications, we see that people can actually retain their muscle mass. Of course, we need to see this done. This was with liraglutide, so we need to see this done with semaglutide and tirzepatide. And again, I still think that this is critical to why when you're trying to lose weight, you should include exercise, specifically strength training. So I'm hoping that this elucidated some things and shed some light on what I consider to be fear-mongering. We can say that we should be worried about losing lean mass, but it's preventable. At least research shows with what we currently know that it's preventable. Again, it's okay to report these results. I would encourage people to report these results because it's going to put a premium on doing strength training. And I think we need to make people aware of the fact that they can lose lean mass, but that there are mitigating factors out there that can help them retain lean mass if they are on these medications for optimal weight loss. Okay, so again, hopefully this helped. Hopefully this shed some light on some of the research and what you can do if you are on a GLP-1 medication or if you are thinking about taking one. Again, I am not a medical doctor. I'm a doctor of exercise. I prescribe push-ups, but I do have a decent understanding of the research, and hopefully explaining this to you helped out a little bit with that fear of losing lean mass if that was a fear that you might have had.